mentioned in the Bible and ancient texts like the Book of Enoch. In this video we dive deep into one of the most puzzling and controversial mysteries of ancient times. Were the Nephilim fallen angels, hybrid offspring, or simply misunderstood legends? Join us as we explore the origins, nature and fate of these giant beings, uncovering clues from scripture, ancient writings and modern theories. Prepare to challenge what you thought you knew about biblical history and the supernatural. Let's unlock the mystery of the Nephilim, together. Discover the ancient mystery of the Nephilim, giants of the Bible and Book of Enoch. Across the ancient pages of the Bible and other ancient texts lies a chilling and captivating mystery, the Nephilim. These giant beings, briefly mentioned in Genesis and elaborated on in apocryphal books like the Book of Enoch, have puzzled scholars, theologians and mystery seekers for centuries. Were they fallen angels, human hybrids, or simply misunderstood metaphors? In this video we will unravel their origin, explore their purpose and trace their fate, using scripture, ancient writings and modern-day interpretations. So sit back and prepare to uncover one of the Bible's most enigmatic secrets, the Nephilim. 1. Who were the Nephilim? The word Nephilim first appears in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4, in a passage that has sparked centuries of debate. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown. The term Nephilim is often translated as giants, but in Hebrew the root word NPL means to fall, or fallen ones. This immediately raises questions. Were these giants in stature or fallen in nature? Some traditions interpret the sons of God, B'nai Elohim, as fallen angels who took human wives, producing giant offspring, the Nephilim. Others argue they were simply godly descendants of Seth intermarrying with the wicked descendants of Cain. But if that's true, why call their offspring giants, or heroes of old? 2. The Book of Enoch's deeper insight. To truly grasp the mystery of the Nephilim, we turn to the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text not found in the Bible but widely read in early Judaism and early Christianity. In 1 Enoch chapter 6 to 7 we find a stunning elaboration. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after the daughters of men. They were in all 200 who descended on Mount Hermon. And they took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go in unto them. And they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells. These angels, known as the Watchers, broke divine laws by descending to earth and corrupting human genetics and knowledge. Their offspring, the Nephilim, were violent giants who consumed all the acquisitions of men, even turning to cannibalism, according to Enoch. This paints the Nephilim not just as mythical beings, but as a cosmic corruption, beings that defied the natural order. 3. Their purpose, a cosmic rebellion? So what was the Nephilim's purpose? Were they merely the result of divine lust, or part of a larger rebellion? Many scholars suggest the story of the Watchers and their Nephilim offspring mirrors ancient Mesopotamian myths of gods mating with humans. Yet, in the Hebrew tradition the act is not celebrated, it is condemned. In this light, the Nephilim become more than giants. They represent a cosmic contamination, an unnatural mingling between the divine and the human, that provoked divine wrath. Indeed, according to Enoch, the Nephilim brought war, magic, weaponry, astrology, and forbidden knowledge to mankind. They were the catalysts of chaos, leading to widespread corruption and ultimately to God's judgment. 4. The flood, God's response to the Nephilim. Genesis 6 is followed by the story of Noah's flood, which is more than just a tale of divine cleansing. It's directly linked to the Nephilim. The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth. So the Lord said, I will wipe from the face of the earth the human race I have created. Genesis 6 verses 5 to 7. According to the Book of Enoch, the Watchers begged Enoch to intercede with God after seeing their children, the Nephilim, destroy humanity. But God rejected their plea. The flood was a divine reset, meant to cleanse the earth of Nephilim blood. But strangely, Numbers 13:33, written long after the flood, claims, "We saw the Nephilim there, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes." How could the Nephilim still exist after the flood? This has puzzled interpreters for centuries. 5. Did the Nephilim return after the flood? Some theories propose that the Nephilim bloodline survived through Noah's family, perhaps through his sons' wives, or that another group of fallen angels returned after the flood. In the book of Numbers, the Anakim, Rephaim, and Emim are all described as giants living in Canaan. King Og of Bashan is said to sleep in a bed over 13 feet long. These may be post-flood echoes of Nephilim bloodlines. Jewish tradition and even early church fathers like Justin Martyr and Irenaeus believed that some Nephilim did survive, and their descendants plagued the Israelites throughout the Old Testament. So while the flood purged much of the earth, it may not have completely eradicated the Nephilim threat. 6. Nephilim in modern theories. Today, the Nephilim remain popular in alternative history, fringe theology, and even UFO circles. Some believe the Nephilim were ancient hybrids created by extraterrestrial beings, interpreting the sons of God as visitors from other worlds. Others suggest the Nephilim were part of an ancient genetic experiment, a concept that aligns with the Book of Enoch's themes of forbidden knowledge and biocorruption. In modern times, these theories have influenced fiction, conspiracy theories, and pop culture, from ancient aliens to the Book of Eli. The idea of a hidden race of ancient giants strikes a deep chord in our collective imagination. 7. Theological implications. But beyond the mystery and mythology, the story of the Nephilim raises theological questions. What does it mean that heavenly beings could mate with humans? How does that affect the understanding of spiritual beings in the material world? Others suggest the Nephilim were part of an ancient genetic experiment, a concept that aligns with the Book of Enoch's themes of forbidden knowledge and biocorruption. In modern times, these theories have influenced fiction, conspiracy theories, and pop culture, from ancient aliens to the Book of Eli. The idea of a hidden race of ancient giants strikes a deep chord in our collective imagination. 7. Theological implications. But beyond the mystery and mythology, the story of the Nephilim raises theological questions. What does it mean that heavenly beings could mate with humans? How does that affect the understanding of spiritual beings in the material world? Many theologians argue that these stories are symbolic, representing the depth of humanity's fall and the extent of evil before the flood. Others take them more literally as warnings of spiritual corruption and boundary crossing. Ultimately, the Nephilim challenge our assumptions about the ancient world, the nature of angels, and the unseen dimensions of reality. 8. The fate of the Nephilim. According to the Book of Enoch, the souls of the Nephilim, though their bodies were destroyed in the flood, became evil spirits that wander the earth, what later texts would call demons. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies. 1 Enoch 15:8, 9. This chilling idea suggests that demons are not fallen angels, but the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, condemned to roam and torment. In this view, the Nephilim didn't just vanish, they transitioned from physical terror to spiritual menace. 9. Lost knowledge and hidden truth. So why was the Book of Enoch excluded from the Bible? Why is the story of the Nephilim so brief in Genesis but richly detailed in banned texts? Some believe the story was suppressed because it threatened theological simplicity. Others think it reflects a hidden tradition of ancient knowledge, one that the early church couldn't endorse. Today, the story of the Nephilim invites us to explore ancient texts with new eyes. Whether literal giants, symbolic fallen beings, or spiritual metaphors, the Nephilim represent the blurred line between heaven and earth, order and chaos, divine and profane. In the end, the Nephilim are more than just ancient giants, they are symbols of rebellion, corruption, and mystery. They point to an ancient time when the boundaries between the divine and human were crossed, with catastrophic consequences. Whether you view them as myth, metaphor, or ancient reality, the Nephilim continue to spark fascination. From the Bible to Enoch, from ancient Mesopotamia to modern theories, They remain one of the most provocative enigmas in biblical history. If you've enjoyed this journey through lost knowledge and forbidden lore, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your theories about the Nephilim in the comments below. Were they fallen angels, hybrids, or something else entirely? Join us next time as we continue to uncover the mysteries of ancient texts, hidden histories, and divine secrets. Until then, stay curious and keep seeking the truth. Giants on Earth, the mysterious Nephilim explained. Across cultures and continents, stories of giants have captivated human imagination. But perhaps none are more mysterious or controversial than the biblical Nephilim. Mentioned briefly yet powerfully in ancient texts, the Nephilim have sparked centuries of debate. Were they fallen angels, hybrid offspring, or simply great warriors? Why were they so feared that their presence warranted a global flood? This article delves deep into the origins, nature, and interpretations of the Nephilim, exploring what the ancient texts really say, and what mysteries still surround these so-called giants of the earth. The biblical origin of the Nephilim. The Nephilim first appear in Genesis 6 verses 1-4, in one of the most cryptic passages in the Hebrew Bible. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." Genesis 6 verses 1-4 NIV. This passage precedes the narrative of Noah's flood, suggesting that the rise of the Nephilim was somehow connected to the increasing corruption of the world. The Hebrew term, Nephilim, is often translated as giants, but its root meaning is ambiguous. Derived from the Hebrew verb npl, meaning to fall, some scholars interpret Nephilim as fallen ones, the sons of God, and the daughters of men. The identity of the sons of God is a central question in understanding the Nephilim. There are three primary interpretations. 1. Angelic interpretation, supernatural view. This is the oldest and most traditional view, held by early Jewish writers and many early Christians. According to this interpretation, the sons of God were fallen angels who descended to earth, lusted after human women, and produced hybrid offspring, the Nephilim. This view is supported by the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish text excluded from the canonical Bible. Enoch 6-7 describes a group of 200 angels, known as the Watchers, who descend to Mount Hermon and take human wives. Their children were monstrous giants who consumed all the resources of earth and turned violent. This corrupted world is what led God to send the flood. And they became pregnant and they bare great giants, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Enoch 7:2-4. 2. Royal or dynastic interpretation, human view. Some scholars, especially during the post-exilic period, interpreted the sons of God as royal figures or rulers, possibly tyrannical kings who took many wives. The Nephilim would then be their offspring, viewed as mighty warriors or nobles, not supernatural beings. 3. Sethite interpretation, moral view. This Christian interpretation became dominant in later centuries. Here, the sons of God are seen as the descendants of Seth, the righteous son of Adam, while the daughters of men are descendants of Cain, the sinful brother. Their intermarriage led to moral corruption, and their offspring, possibly Nephilim, were metaphorically giants in wickedness. The Nephilim and the Great Flood. The appearance of the Nephilim is directly linked to the reason for the flood in Genesis. God saw that human wickedness was great and decided to wipe out humanity, sparing only Noah, who was said to be blameless in his generation. This correlation raises intriguing questions. Were the Nephilim part of the reason for God's judgment? If they were hybrid beings, part angel, part human, was the flood an act of genetic cleansing, so to speak, to restore divine order? The Book of Enoch strongly affirms this idea. According to Enoch, the fallen angels corrupted the earth not only through their offspring but by teaching forbidden knowledge, like sorcery, astrology, and warfare. Post-flood Nephilim. Why were they still around? A major mystery arises from the phrase, "The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward." Genesis 6 verse 4. If the flood wiped out all living beings except Noah's family, how could the Nephilim appear again? The Nephilim re-emerge in the Book of Numbers, during the Israelites' exploration of Canaan. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. Numbers 13:33. This suggests that giant-like beings still existed in the Promised Land, an idea that terrified the spies and discouraged the Israelites. These beings are called the Anakim or Rephaim, often associated with giant clans. There are a few theories explaining their post-flood survival. Second incursion theory. Some believe more fallen angels came to earth after the flood and repeated the corruption. Survival theory. Others speculate that one of Noah's daughters-in-law may have carried Nephilim DNA. Exaggeration theory. From a skeptical point of view, the Nephilim of Numbers may have been great warriors or tall tribes whom the Israelites perceived as giants out of fear. Who were the Rephaim, Anakim, and other giants? The Bible and other ancient texts speak of several giant tribes that may be linked to the Nephilim. These include Anakim, descendants of Anak, seen in Canaan, described as exceptionally tall and fearsome. Rephaim, an ancient race of giants, mentioned in Deuteronomy and Genesis. Og, king of Bashan, was a Rephaim and had a massive iron bed over 13 feet long, Deuteronomy 3 verse 11. Zamzummim and Emim, other tribes in the Transjordan said to be giants and feared by neighboring peoples. These references imply that giant-like humans, or at least legendary ones, persisted long after the flood, suggesting that Nephilim-like beings were either symbolic of power or had lingering genetic roots. The Book of Enoch and the Watchers. Though not included in the traditional biblical canon, the Book of Enoch was highly influential in early Jewish and Christian thought. It provides the most detailed account of the origin and fate of the Nephilim. The Watchers, the angels who fell, are judged by God. The Nephilim, their monstrous offspring, are said to be killed in the flood, but their spirits remain on earth, becoming evil spirits or demons. Others suggest the Nephilim were part of an ancient genetic experiment, a concept that aligns with the Book of Enoch's themes of forbidden knowledge and biocorruption. In modern times, these theories have influenced fiction, conspiracy theories, and pop culture, from ancient aliens to the Book of Eli. The idea of a hidden race of ancient giants strikes a deep chord in our collective imagination. 7. Theological implications. But beyond the mystery and mythology, the story of the Nephilim raises theological questions. What does it mean that heavenly beings could mate with humans? How does that affect the understanding of spiritual beings in the material world? Many theologians argue that these stories are symbolic, representing the depth of humanity's fall and the extent of evil before the flood. Others take them more literally as warnings of spiritual corruption and boundary crossing. Ultimately, the Nephilim challenge our assumptions about the ancient world, the nature of angels, and the unseen dimensions of reality. 8. The fate of the Nephilim. According to the Book of Enoch, the souls of the Nephilim, though their bodies were destroyed in the flood, became evil spirits that wander the earth, what later texts would call demons. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh, shall be called evil spirits upon the earth. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies. 1 Enoch 15:8, 9. This chilling idea suggests that demons are not fallen angels, but the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, condemned to roam and torment. In this view, the Nephilim didn't just vanish, they transitioned from physical terror to spiritual menace. 9. Lost knowledge and hidden truth. So why was the Book of Enoch excluded from the Bible? Why is the story of the Nephilim so brief in Genesis but richly detailed in banned texts? Some believe the story was suppressed because it threatened theological simplicity. Others think it reflects a hidden tradition of ancient knowledge, one that the early church couldn't endorse. Today, the story of the Nephilim invites us to explore ancient texts with new eyes. Whether literal giants, symbolic fallen beings, or spiritual metaphors, the Nephilim represent the blurred line between heaven and earth, order and chaos, divine and profane. In the end, the Nephilim are more than just ancient giants. They are symbols of rebellion, corruption, and mystery. They point to an ancient time when the boundaries between the divine and human were crossed, with catastrophic consequences. Whether you view them as myth, metaphor, or ancient reality, the Nephilim continue to spark fascination. From the Bible to Enoch, from ancient Mesopotamia to modern theories, they remain one of the most provocative enigmas in biblical history. The identity of the fallen angels. Judgment of the angels and the Nephilim. The concept of divine judgment has been a central theme in Judeo-Christian theology. Among the more mysterious and often controversial aspects of this doctrine is the judgment of angels, specifically the fallen angels, and their connection with the Nephilim, beings mentioned briefly in the early chapters of Genesis. This topic, though enigmatic, touches on deep themes of rebellion, divine order, and the consequences of transgression against God's law, both in the spiritual and earthly realms. This essay explores the biblical and extra-biblical foundations for understanding the judgment of the angels and the Nephilim, drawing from sources such as Genesis, the Book of Enoch, 2 Peter, Jude, and Revelation, as well as historical interpretations from Jewish and Christian traditions. Who are the angels and the Nephilim? 1. The angels in question. In Scripture, angels are spiritual beings created by God, serving as messengers, ministers, and agents of His divine will. While most angels remain loyal to God, some chose to rebel. These rebellious angels are often referred to as fallen angels. The most notable among them is Satan, but many others are believed to have joined him in defiance. 2. The Nephilim. The Nephilim are first introduced in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. They were the heroes of old, men of renown." The term sons of God, Hebrew, B'nai Ha-Elohim, has long been interpreted in different ways. The most ancient and widely accepted interpretation, particularly in Jewish tradition, is that these were angels, more specifically fallen angels, who took human women as wives. Their offspring were the Nephilim, often described as giants or mighty men. 2. The rebellion and sin of the angels. 1. The Book of Enoch's account. While the Genesis passage is brief, the Book of Enoch, an ancient Jewish apocalyptic text, not part of the biblical canon for most traditions, elaborates extensively on this event. It identifies a group of 200 angels known as the Watchers, led by figures like Semyaza and Azazel, who descended to earth and corrupted humanity. According to 1 Enoch 6-16, these angels took human wives, taught forbidden knowledge, warfare, sorcery, astrology, cosmetics, etc. Produced hybrid offspring, the Nephilim, who became violent and destructive. Defiled themselves in the natural order. 2. The consequences of the angels' sin. God judged these angels severely. And the Lord said unto Michael, "Go, bind Semjaza and his associates, in the valleys of the earth till the day of their judgment." 1 Enoch 10:11-13. The judgment involved binding these angels in the abyss until the final judgment. Azazel in particular, is cast into a desert and covered with rocks. 3. Biblical affirmations of angelic judgment. Though the Book of Enoch is not canonical in most Christian traditions, except the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, New Testament writers seem to reference its themes and even specific passages. 1. 2 Peter 2 verses 4-5. For if God did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment, if he did not spare the ancient world but preserved Noah. This passage directly links the sin of certain angels with the time of Noah, reinforcing the Genesis-Enoch connection. The Greek word translated as hell is Tartarus, a term used in Greek mythology for the deep abyss where rebellious beings are imprisoned. 2. Jude 1 verses 6-7. And the angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. Jude explicitly mentions angels abandoning their proper domain, an apparent reference to the watchers descending to earth. He likens their sin to Sodom and Gomorrah, cities known for sexual immorality and unnatural desire. These passages reveal that a specific group of angels committed a grave sin. They are now bound in chains, awaiting future judgment. Their actions are tied to a rebellion against divine order, especially regarding sexuality and human corruption. 4. The judgment of the Nephilim. 1. The flood as judgment. The Nephilim, as the unnatural offspring of angels and humans, were a major reason for the corruption of the earth. Genesis continues, "The Lord saw how great the wickedness of the human race had become. The Lord regretted that he had made human beings on the earth, and his heart was deeply troubled." Genesis 6 verses 5-6. The solution was the flood, which wiped out all except Noah and his family. The destruction of the Nephilim was part of this purging. 2. Were there Nephilim after the flood? Numbers 13:33 records the words of the Israelite spies. "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." This reference has led to speculation that some Nephilim survived or reappeared after the flood. Some scholars believe the term was reused for later giants, like the Anakim or Rephaim, while others propose post-flood genetic corruption or metaphorical language. However, it is clear that the original Nephilim, the offspring of the Watchers, were destroyed in the flood as part of divine judgment. V. Final judgment of the angels. 1. Awaiting judgment. The fallen angels, those who sinned before the flood, are not yet fully judged. As Peter and Jude state, they are kept in chains, awaiting the final judgment. 2. Revelation's vision. In the book of Revelation, we see glimpses of this final judgment. Revelation 12 describes a war in heaven between Michael and his angels and the dragon, Satan, and his angels. The dragon is cast down to earth. Revelation 20 verse 10 speaks of the lake of fire as the final destination for the devil and his followers. And the devil who had deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, and will be tormented day and night forever and ever. Although it specifically names Satan, it is assumed that the rebellious angels will share in this fate. Matthew 25 verse 41 confirms this. "Then he will say to those on his left, 'Depart from me, you cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels.'" 3. The role of humans in angelic judgment. A surprising statement appears in 1 Corinthians 6 verse 3. "Do you not know that we will judge angels?" Paul reminds the Corinthian believers that in the age to come, redeemed humanity will participate in God's justice, even over angelic beings. This underscores the seriousness of angelic rebellion and the high calling of the redeemed. 6. Theological implications. 1. The cosmic consequences of rebellion. The story of the fallen angels and the Nephilim emphasizes that sin is not just a human issue, it's a cosmic rebellion. Spiritual beings who were created good and powerful chose to rebel, corrupting the earth. Their judgment reflects that no being is above God's law, and that even the highest angels are accountable. 2. Boundaries in creation. The sin of the angels involved crossing divinely established boundaries, angels taking human form, engaging in sexuality and producing unnatural offspring. This aligns with other biblical judgments where transgressing God's created order, e.g. Sodom, Babel, results in divine wrath. 3. Divine justice and mercy. God's judgment on the Nephilim and the angels was immediate and severe, but he also preserved Noah, demonstrating his commitment to justice and mercy. The final judgment still awaits, a sign of God's patience and timing. 4. Spiritual warfare and vigilance. For believers today, the judgment of the angels serves as a warning and a call to vigilance. It reveals that spiritual rebellion has tangible effects on earth, and that spiritual warfare is real. Yet it also points to the certainty that evil will be judged. 7. Contemporary interpretations and controversies. Modern scholars and theologians hold differing views on these accounts. Literal view. Many ancient and some modern interpreters take the Genesis 6 and Enoch narratives literally, believing that angels indeed mated with human women. Sethite view. Others argue that sons of God refers to the righteous line of Seth and the daughters of men, to the ungodly line of Cain. Mythological or allegorical view. Some suggest the stories are symbolic of corruption or mythological in nature, not to be read literally. Despite the debate, early Jewish and Christian writings, like Enoch, Jubilees and the Epistles, strongly support a supernatural understanding of these events. The judgment of the angels and the Nephilim is a rich and sobering topic. It reflects God's intolerance for rebellion and corruption, even among the celestial beings. The sins of the fallen angels disrupted both heaven and earth, necessitating divine intervention through the flood and future judgment. Though mysterious and at times speculative, these stories teach enduring truths. God's justice is impartial, boundaries matter in creation, and divine order will ultimately be restored. As the faithful await the final judgment, these accounts inspire awe, caution, and hope in the sovereign plan of God. The identity of the fallen angels. The concept of fallen angels is one of the most compelling and enigmatic themes in religious literature. These beings, once divine, are portrayed as cast out of heaven due to rebellion, pride, or moral corruption. Their stories are foundational to the theological framework of evil and cosmic struggle in many traditions, especially within Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. This essay explores the identity of the fallen angels by examining their origins, the scriptural and extra-biblical references, the symbolic meanings ascribed to them, and how they have been interpreted over time. Origins of the concept. The term fallen angel refers to those angels who were expelled from heaven due to disobedience to God. Though the Bible does not use the phrase explicitly, the concept is strongly implied in several texts. The most referenced source is Revelation 12 verses 7 to 9, which describes a war in heaven where Michael and his angels fight against the dragon and his angels, interpreted as Satan and his followers. The passage concludes, "The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him." This foundational image sets the stage for understanding fallen angels as rebellious beings who once held celestial status. However, the most detailed account of the fall of angels is found not in the canonical texts of the Bible, but in extra-biblical literature, especially the Book of Enoch, a Jewish apocalyptic text that expands on Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Book of Enoch elaborates on this passage, naming the fallen angels as watchers, a group of 200 angels who descended to earth, lusted after human women, and fathered the Nephilim, giant, violent beings. Their leader, Semjaza or Semiaza, and his cohort, including Azazel, are condemned for corrupting humanity and teaching forbidden knowledge such as weaponry, sorcery, and cosmetics. Biblical and extra-biblical references. Though fallen angels are not a major focus of canonical scripture, their presence can be inferred in a few key passages. 1. Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15. This passage refers to a figure called Lucifer, Latin for light bringer, described as having fallen from heaven. "How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn." Though this is primarily a taunt against the king of Babylon, later Christian interpretation associated Lucifer with Satan, identifying him as a high angel who rebelled against God due to pride. 2. Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17. This oracle against the king of Tyre includes imagery of a being who was the model of perfection, blameless in his ways until wickedness was found in him. Again, though originally intended as a metaphor for earthly arrogance, theologians have read it as an allusion to Satan's origin. 3. Jude 1 verse 6 and 2 Peter 2 verse 4. Both New Testament epistles refer to angels who sinned and are now kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains. These references align with the narrative in 1 Enoch and demonstrate that early Christians accepted or were at least familiar with the idea of rebellious angels punished for their transgressions. Names and identities of fallen angels. Various traditions and texts assign names and identities to fallen angels. The Book of Enoch is the most detailed in this regard, listing 20 leaders of the fallen watchers. Some notable names include Simjaza, the leader who convinced the others to join in his rebellion; Azazel, accused of teaching humanity warfare and cosmetics, punished by being bound in a desert; Armoros, Kokabil, Barakiel, other named watchers with specific roles in corrupting humanity. In Christian tradition, the most prominent fallen angel is Lucifer, commonly equated with Satan. According to post-biblical interpretations, Lucifer was a high-ranking archangel who became prideful and sought to ascend above God, based largely on Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28. Consequently, he and a third of the angels were cast out of heaven, Revelation 12 verse 4. Other sources, like the Apocalypse of Abraham and the Testament of Solomon, add to the list of fallen angels, including beings who tempt humans and rule over specific sins or territories. Interpretive perspectives. The fallen angels have been interpreted differently across theological and philosophical traditions. Broadly, there are three main approaches: literal, symbolic, and mythological. Literal interpretation. In this view, fallen angels are real, spiritual beings who were created by God but fell due to their own free will. This interpretation is prevalent in conservative Christian theology, especially in Catholic, Orthodox, and evangelical traditions. The fall of the angels is seen as the primordial rebellion, preceding even the fall of Adam and Eve. This view maintains that Satan, once a glorious archangel, led a rebellion against God out of pride and ambition. The other fallen angels, now demons, serve him in his ongoing war against God's kingdom and influence human affairs through temptation and possession. Symbolic interpretation. Many scholars, especially modern theologians and biblical critics, view the stories of fallen angels symbolically. According to this perspective, the narrative reflects human struggles with pride, power, and moral failure. The fallen angels are personifications of human vices or warnings against overreaching ambition. Isaiah and Ezekiel, for instance, are understood to use the imagery of fallen angels metaphorically to condemn the hubris of earthly rulers. Lucifer, in this view, is not a literal being but a symbol of prideful rebellion. Mythological and cultural analysis. Some scholars examine the concept of fallen angels in the broader context of ancient Near Eastern mythology. Similar stories of divine beings who descend to earth and become corrupt can be found in Mesopotamian, Canaanite, and Greek mythology. For example, the story of the Titan Prometheus, who defies the gods and brings fire, knowledge, to humanity, parallels Azazel's role in Enoch. This comparative approach suggests that the fallen angels may represent an amalgamation of various mythic themes adapted by the Israelites during periods of exile and cultural exchange. Theological implications. The doctrine of fallen angels plays a crucial role in understanding the problem of evil in Christian theology. Their fall precedes the fall of man and thus provides a cosmic dimension to the origin of sin. According to Augustine and later theologians like Thomas Aquinas, angels were created with free will. Some chose to love God, while others chose pride and self-exaltation. The existence of these beings provides an explanation for the presence of evil spirits and demonic activity in the world. Moreover, their punishment serves as a warning to humanity about the consequences of rebellion. Islamic perspective. In Islam, the concept of fallen angels is treated differently. The Quran does not support the idea that angels can sin, as they are described as perfectly obedient to God, Quran 66:6. Instead, the figure most analogous to Satan is Iblis, who is a jinn, not an angel, Quran 18:50. Iblis refuses to bow to Adam out of pride and is cast out of God's grace. Some Islamic traditions mention Harut and Marut, two angels sent to test humanity in Babylon. They taught people sorcery but warned them against using it. While some see this as an example of angels falling, Orthodox Islamic theology maintains that true angels do not disobey God. Fallen angels in literature and culture. The motif of the fallen angel has permeated literature and art for centuries. John Milton's Paradise Lost offers the most influential literary depiction, portraying Lucifer, Satan, as a tragic anti-hero who declares, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." Milton's Satan is proud, articulate, and sympathetic in many ways, a reflection of Enlightenment concerns with individualism and rebellion against tyranny. Romantic poets such as Blake and Byron also reimagined the fallen angel as a figure of defiance and creativity, often aligned with the artist's struggle against societal norms. In modern pop culture, fallen angels appear in movies, books, and television shows as complex, brooding figures who struggle with redemption, love, and identity. This evolution reflects a shift from viewing them as purely evil to seeing them as tragic, misunderstood characters. The identity of the fallen angels is a rich and multifaceted subject that blends theology, mythology, literature, and psychology. Whether seen as literal beings, symbols of rebellion, or cultural archetypes, fallen angels continue to captivate human imagination. Their stories raise essential questions about the nature of free will, the origins of evil, and the struggle between obedience and autonomy. In religious contexts, they serve as cautionary tales about pride and disobedience. In literary and cultural representations, they reflect the complexity of the human condition, the desire to ascend, the pain of failure, and the possibility of redemption. Ultimately, the fallen angels stand as enduring figures in the spiritual and moral landscape of humanity, simultaneously feared and empathized with, despised and admired. Their fall from grace reminds us not only of divine judgment but also of the frailty and grandeur of the will. Christian demonology, a branch of theology that systematically classifies demons and explains their origins and roles within the spiritual cosmos, has evolved through centuries of biblical interpretation, apocryphal literature, patristic writings, and medieval mysticism. Among the many enigmatic figures populating this dark theology, Azazel stands out as particularly complex. From ancient Hebrew scapegoat rituals to medieval depictions of demonic hierarchy, Azazel's identity morphs from fallen angel to demon lord, sometimes even merging with the figure of Satan himself. This essay explores the evolution of Azazel in Christian demonology, examining how his role transitions through scriptural traditions, early Jewish apocalyptic literature, and ultimately into medieval Christian demonology. By examining these transformations, we gain insight into how the Christian worldview absorbed and reinterpreted older mythologies to fit its theological framework. Azazel in ancient Hebrew tradition. The earliest mention of Azazel is found in the Hebrew Bible, specifically in Leviticus 16, which describes the Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, ritual. 2 goats were presented to the high priest, one was sacrificed to Yahweh, and the other was sent into the wilderness to Azazel. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. Leviticus 16 verse 8 RSV. This passage is cryptic. Scholars debate whether Azazel refers to a place, a demon, or a symbolic act of removing sin. However, in Second Temple Judaism, particularly in the apocalyptic tradition represented by the Book of Enoch, Azazel becomes more than a mysterious name. He becomes a rebellious watcher, one of the angels who defy God and fall to earth. 2. Azazel in the Book of Enoch, the fallen angel. The Book of Enoch, an important apocryphal text excluded from most Christian canons, provides a crucial link in Azazel's transformation. In 1 Enoch, particularly the Book of the Watchers, chapters 6-16, Azazel is portrayed as one of the chief leaders of the rebellious angels who descended upon Mount Hermon and took human wives. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and he showed them metals of the earth and how they should work them. 1 Enoch 8:1. Azazel corrupts humanity by revealing forbidden knowledge, including warfare, cosmetics, and magical arts. His actions result in widespread sin, leading to divine punishment. Unlike some of the other watchers, Azazel is singled out for especially harsh treatment. According to Enoch, the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. 1 Enoch 10:8. This is a pivotal moment in demonological thought. Azazel becomes not just a rebellious angel but the embodiment of corruption, the original source of human evil. God commands the angel Raphael to bind Azazel and cast him into a pit in the desert, to await the day of judgment. 3. From Enoch to Christian thought, demonization of Azazel. Although the Book of Enoch was not canonized by most branches of Christianity, it profoundly influenced early Christian theology, especially its demonological framework. The Enochian depiction of fallen angels, spiritual beings who taught humans forbidden knowledge, served as a prototype for later Christian understandings of demons. As Christianity developed in the early centuries AD, Azazel's name was not as prominent in canonical scriptures, yet the ideas he represented, angelic rebellion, the origin of evil, and cosmic punishment, remained central. Church fathers like Tertullian and Origen, though not mentioning Azazel by name, echoed the themes found in Enoch. In Christian interpretation, fallen angels were transformed into demons, and the chief of them, Lucifer or Satan, became the embodiment of rebellion against God. Within this context, Azazel begins to blur with Satan. By the medieval period, demonologists sometimes treated Azazel as an alias or alternate form of the devil. 4. Medieval Christian demonology and the classification of demons. Medieval Christianity, particularly from the 12th century onward, saw a surge in systematic demonology, influenced by both theological speculation and popular folklore. This period sought to map the hierarchy of hell, often mirroring the angelic orders in heaven. Texts such as the Lantern of Light, Dictionnaire Infernal, and grimoires like the Lesser Key of Solomon reflect this impulse to classify demons in ranks and roles. In many of these medieval texts, Azazel is presented as one of the prominent demons of hell. His identity shifts from the corrupted Watcher of Enoch to a fully fledged demon prince, often listed as a subordinate of Lucifer or as a demon of the wilderness and chaos. In the grimoires of Western occultism and magic, Azazel sometimes appears as a standard-bearer in Hell's army, a guardian of hidden knowledge, especially martial knowledge, a tempter of mankind through pride, vanity, and sorcery. Some late medieval and Renaissance demonologists go further and identify Azazel as synonymous with Satan, or at least with one of his major lieutenants. This conflation is logical within the Christian mindset, which often portrayed all rebellion against God as ultimately satanic. Azazel, the one to whom all sin is ascribed, in Enoch, easily became equated with the prince of demons. V. Azazel in occult and esoteric Christian traditions. Outside the official theological structures of the Church, Azazel continued to appear in mystical and magical texts. These esoteric traditions, particularly those influenced by Hermeticism, Kabbalah, and later Rosicrucian and alchemical writings, often reinterpreted Azazel's role in more symbolic or mystical ways. In some grimoires, Azazel is invoked as a spirit of knowledge, particularly in rituals meant to gain power, secret wisdom, or military success. His associations with metallurgy, weaponry, and forbidden arts persisted, reflecting his role in Enoch as the bringer of civilization's darker tools. One of the most famous references to Azazel appears in the Goetia, a section of the Lesser Key of Solomon, though he is not listed among the 72 demons. However, modern occult practitioners often include or invoke him, sometimes associating him with Lucifer or Samael. 6. Azazel and Satan, distinct or identical. One of the most debated aspects of Christian demonology is whether Azazel is a distinct being from Satan or simply another name for the same adversary. While canonical scripture rarely mentions Azazel by name, Satan is a central figure in both Old and New Testaments. The key distinctions lie in origin and function. Satan is typically portrayed in the New Testament as the great adversary, the tempter of Christ, and the accuser of mankind, see Revelation 12, Luke 4. Azazel, rooted in the Hebrew ritual tradition and expanded through Enoch, is more associated with the origin of sin, specifically through revelation of forbidden knowledge. However, both figures are bound by a common theme: opposition to divine will. Over time, the Christian imagination increasingly collapsed these identities into one another, reinforcing a dualistic worldview where all evil flows from a single ultimate source. In some medieval texts, Azazel is part of a triad or infernal trinity, alongside Satan and Beelzebub, representing different aspects of the demonic agenda: pride, lust, and wrath, for example. This theological structure allowed demonologists to assign specific sins and corruptions to different spirits, making Azazel a key figure in the temptation of humanity. 7. Modern interpretations and legacy. In modern Christian thought, Azazel is not frequently mentioned in mainstream theology. However, in scholarly and esoteric circles, he continues to be a topic of fascination. Contemporary theologians and historians view Azazel as a syncretic figure, part biblical scapegoat, part Enochian rebel, part medieval demon. His character embodies the evolution of how ancient religions externalized evil and built mythological frameworks to explain suffering and sin. In popular culture, Azazel has seen a resurgence through novels, films, and TV series. He appears as a demon in Supernatural, as a villain in the X-Men universe, and as a central figure in various horror stories. These portrayals often draw from his ancient reputation as a corrupter and deceiver. For modern occultists and Luciferian groups, Azazel is sometimes revered as a symbol of rebellion against tyranny or as a source of forbidden knowledge. This echoes his Enochian role and affirms his place in the mythological imagination as a defiant bringer of power and autonomy. The demonology of ambiguity. Azazel's journey from Leviticus to medieval Christian demonology reveals the fluidity of religious myth-making. Originally a mysterious figure associated with the wilderness, he becomes a cosmic villain in Enoch, a demon prince in Christian tradition, and a symbolic archetype in modern spirituality. His identity is never fixed. He is sometimes a scapegoat, sometimes a watcher, a fallen angel, a demon, a lieutenant of Lucifer, or even Satan himself. This ambiguity makes Azazel a powerful symbol in demonology. He embodies not just the personification of sin, but the evolving understanding of evil itself. Through Azazel, we glimpse how Christianity, borrowing from its Jewish roots and adapting to changing cultural fears, constructed a hierarchy of hell to explain the chaos of the human condition. He is, in many ways, the theological shadow of divine law, standing just outside the sanctuary in the wilderness waiting. Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. The figure of Azazel and his role in chaos and impurity. Jewish mysticism, particularly as articulated through Kabbalah, offers a rich and complex view of the spiritual world. Unlike the rationalist traditions of medieval Jewish philosophy, Kabbalah embraces mystery, symbolic language, and mythic cosmology to describe God's emanations, the structure of the universe, and the dynamics of good and evil. Within this framework, certain figures, though not always prominent in canonical Jewish texts, are deeply reinterpreted and expanded. One such figure is Azazel. While briefly mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, Azazel evolves through later Jewish mystical traditions into a symbol of impurity, wilderness, and chaos. In Kabbalistic cosmology, Azazel becomes associated with the left side of divine emanation, opposing holiness and alignment with divine order. This essay explores the role of Azazel within Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, tracing how this enigmatic figure became emblematic of rebellion, impurity, and the dark, chaotic dimensions of existence that challenge divine harmony. Biblical origins of Azazel, the scapegoat and the wilderness. The earliest mention of Azazel appears in Leviticus 16, within the context of the Yom Kippur ritual. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord and the other lot for Azazel. Leviticus 16 verse 8. One goat is sacrificed to God and the other, the scapegoat, is sent into the wilderness to Azazel, bearing the sins of the people. Scholars and rabbis have long debated who or what Azazel represents. Is Azazel a place? A spirit? A demon? Some classical commentators, such as Rashi, interpreted Azazel as a remote, rugged cliff, a symbolic location for removing sin. Others, including Ibn Ezra and later mystical thinkers, suggested that Azazel was a spiritual being or force, a demon of the wilderness. This ambiguity sets the stage for Azazel's later evolution in mystical and apocalyptic traditions. Azazel in Second Temple literature, the Book of Enoch. The figure of Azazel gains significant mythological expansion in apocalyptic texts written during the Second Temple period, particularly in the Book of Enoch, 1 Enoch, which was influential in both Jewish and early Christian circles. In the Book of the Watchers, 1 Enoch 6-16, Azazel is portrayed as a fallen angel, one of the Watchers who descend to earth and corrupt humanity. Azazel's role is unique. He teaches humanity forbidden knowledge such as weapon making, cosmetics, enchantments, and warfare. He is blamed for corrupting the earth with sin, pride, and impurity. The archangel Raphael is instructed to bind Azazel and cast him into a desert abyss until the final judgment. In this apocalyptic vision, Azazel is no longer just a symbolic wilderness figure. He is a demonic corrupter, leading both angels and humans astray. This version of Azazel strongly influenced later mystical and esoteric Jewish thought, particularly within the Kabbalistic tradition. Kabbalah, a cosmic map of divinity and evil. The mystical system of Kabbalah, especially as developed in the Zohar, 13th century Spain, and later Lurianic Kabbalah, 16th century Safed, offers a sophisticated cosmology centered around the Sefirot, 10 emanations of divine energy. In this cosmic structure, all reality flows from Ein Sof, the infinite and unknowable God, through the Sefirot. These Sefirot are usually divided into right, Chesed or mercy, and left, Gevura or judgment, sides. The balance between these polarities sustains the universe. However, Kabbalah also recognizes the presence of impure forces, known as the Sitra Achra, Aramaic, the other side, a realm of demonic or unholy powers that exist in opposition to the holy Sefirot. These forces are not separate from God but represent the distorted reflection of divine energy when it becomes unbalanced or misused. It is within this symbolic framework that Azazel becomes more than a myth. He becomes a representation of the chaotic, rebellious, and destructive forces of the left side when it is detached from its divine source. Azazel in the Zohar, wilderness, impurity, and the left side. The Zohar, the foundational text of medieval Kabbalah, mentions Azazel as a demonic ruler, often associated with the desert and sexual impurity. The desert itself becomes a symbol of spiritual desolation, removed from holiness and structure. In Zoharic symbolism, Azazel is sometimes paired with Lilith, the demonic feminine archetype. Together they represent aspects of impurity and seduction, feeding off human transgression. Azazel in this context is not simply evil for evil's sake. He functions as part of the cosmic balance, absorbing impurity during rituals like Yom Kippur to cleanse the sacred space. Here, Azazel embodies the other side of holiness, necessary but dangerous. Without the existence of such a figure to receive and contain impurity, sin would overflow into the holy realm. The goat sent to Azazel, then, is not merely expelled, it is offered to this demonic force as a way of diverting judgment and cleansing the community. In this way, Azazel paradoxically serves the divine plan, albeit from the shadows. The left side, Gevura, din, and the danger of severed power. To understand Azazel's place in Kabbalistic thought, one must delve into the structure of the left side in the Sephirotic system. The left side includes Gevura, severity, din, judgment, and ultimately Samel, the angel of wrath and destruction, who is often considered a key force within the Sitra Achra. Azazel is sometimes linked or identified with Samel, or portrayed as a lesser demon operating within Samel's domain. Both figures exemplify the disruptive potential of unbalanced judgment, which, when disconnected from divine mercy, Chesed, can lead to harshness, tyranny, and spiritual chaos. Thus, Azazel is a product of divine judgment run amok, severed from its root in holiness. In Lurianic Kabbalah, this severance is explained through the myth of the Shevared HaKalim, the shattering of the vessels. When divine light poured into unready vessels during creation, the vessels shattered, releasing chaotic sparks. These sparks fell into the realm of Kelapot, husks or shells, where impure entities like Azazel reside. Azazel, in this view, is a holder of fallen sparks, a being sustained by divine energy that has been diverted and corrupted. Redemption involves extracting these sparks from the realms of impurity and restoring them to holiness. Wilderness and chaos. Azazel as the Lord of the Desert. The desert is a recurring theme in Jewish mysticism. It represents spiritual exile, a place of testing, temptation, and encounter with the demonic. Azazel's domain is the wilderness because it mirrors his essence: formless, uninhabitable, and spiritually barren. In mystical commentary, the wilderness becomes the mirror of the soul's exile, the chaotic space where God's presence seems hidden. Just as Israel wandered the desert in a liminal state, so too does the soul pass through wilderness experiences, encountering Azazel-like forces that tempt or destroy. Kabbalists interpret the scapegoat ritual as a symbolic drama of casting chaos out of the sacred center. By sending the goat to Azazel, Israel removes spiritual toxins, offering them to a being who thrives in such desolation. Azazel and the human psyche: temptation, projection, and purification. Beyond cosmology, Kabbalah frequently maps spiritual forces onto the inner life of the individual. Azazel, in this context, becomes a symbol of inner temptation, ego-driven power, and the urge to rebel against divine order. Just as the scapegoat bears communal sin, Azazel represents the projection of human guilt onto an external figure. This projection is both dangerous and necessary. It allows people to externalize impurity and engage in ritual purification. The mystical lesson here is not to worship or fear Azazel, but to understand his function. He is a necessary part of the cosmic system that channels negativity away from the holy, allowing for balance and healing. Azazel in later Jewish esotericism and folk tradition. Later Jewish mystical and magical texts, especially those influenced by Kabbalistic demonology, continue to explore Azazel's role. He is sometimes invoked or warded off, in amulets, incantations, and protective prayers. His name is associated with accusation, sexual corruption, and destructive power. In Hasidic and later mystical traditions, the figure of Azazel is less emphasized, but the themes he embodies, wilderness, chaos, and the need to subdue the other side, remain central to spiritual practice. The mystical meaning of Azazel. Azazel, within Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, is far more than a scapegoat or fallen angel. He is a powerful symbol of the cosmic struggle between order and chaos, holiness and impurity, divine structure and rebellious force. Positioned on the left side of the divine map, Azazel represents what happens when judgment and power are disconnected from mercy and love. But paradoxically, he also serves a redemptive purpose, absorbing impurity, marking boundaries between sacred and profane, and reminding humanity of the delicate balance that sustains the universe. Through the lens of Kabbalah, Azazel's presence is not an accident or mere evil. He is a necessary adversary, a force that reveals the consequences of imbalance, and a shadow through which the light of divine harmony shines more clearly. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the mysterious and chaotic legacy of Azazel. From forbidden teachings to his exile into the wilderness, Azazel's role in Enoch's mythology continues to echo through ancient texts and modern interpretations. If this journey into angelic rebellion and divine judgment fascinated you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into biblical mysteries and ancient lore. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you see Azazel as a villain, a scapegoat, or something more? Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and keep uncovering the secrets hidden in sacred history.